colleagues. This is not the graveyard session, okay? And this is not Professor Mukali, okay? And this is not session 3, okay? So let's see, what is it? We've now moved session 2 into the slot of session 3. I'm standing in for Professor Mukali, and usually after lunch, we think it's the graveyard session. It's actually going to be a really exciting session. And in it, there will be 2 videos that we'll be showing. And colleagues, I need to declare my interests for this session. I was not supposed to be chairing this session, and I'm declaring my interests. I have 3 colleagues in the session from CEDU, from the College of Education. So, let us get started. Let's quickly have a look at the program. Our session now is called Towards Transforming Learning and Teaching. And we're looking at the transformative curriculum, how we've gone about transforming the curriculum. And I want to, at this point, welcome Prof. Moche. She is on her way in now, and also to greet and to thank our guest speaker, from Dr. Bahari Leek. Thank you so much. The presenters for this session, I want to just see that everybody is here. Prof. Motladi Sitlako is here. Dr. Pierre Picaud is here. Professor Piet Venter is there. Thank you, Prof. Prof. Anton Pablo, welcome. And then, okay, it's Nkosinati Maselele and Suzanne Marie Buchner. Are they here? There they are. Welcome. And then Patricia Sabisi is not here, but she will be doing hers as part of an audio presentation. So let us start off with our first presenter. And I'm going to read her, and I'll read very briefly her bio. And the first one is Angie Motladi Sitlako, and she is from CEDU, and she will be doing the first presentation by way of video that she will voice over for you. And Angie has many years of experience as an academic in education. She actually started as a grade 1 teacher, and I think most of us in our college have had some time in grade 1. She then, at some stage, went to the high school and taught at Soshanguve, and then at the old TCE College of Education, the Teachers College in Soshanguve. Angie joined Unisa in 2003, so she's quite an old girl. And her history is that she spent many years teaching and upgrading teachers and enhancing teacher skills. And her focus area is technology. And she has a history of many universities. I notice here, apart from Unisa and TCE, she studied at Northern Iowa in the USA. She's done some studies at WITS, some at Vista University. And Angie's response, and some at Stellenbosch, she's done some work at Stellenbosch as well. And in our college, Angie works on the BPT 1501, which is our, what do you call the module, and the signature module for our college. And so I'm going to ask Angie to come up, and we can start her presentation. And Angie will voice over. So I'll move aside, and Angie will be at the podium to voice over. Thanks. So can we give Angie a hand here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first and foremost, I would like to say all protocol observed. And I would also like to thank you for taking your time, more especially after lunch, to come and listen to us as we share our experiences of what and how we provide services to our clients, which is our students, while sitting in our little corners in our offices, but doing work all the time. Of course, we are always thinking, we are always planning, we are always reflecting and evaluating in order to improve the services we provide to our students. And as teachers, we always need to improve what we are doing so as our students should be on par with what is happening in the world. In this case, I would like to talk to you about being a professional teacher, which is an online module. This module was introduced in 2013, and this is the module I present to our students. Being a professional teacher is a module facilitated online because this is an online module. Online teaching and learning is a new learning approach to many of our students. More especially, this module is offered in the first year of our students. They come from high school, they come from working from checkers and all those kind of things, but it's offered to the majority of our students. By now, we all know our complement of our students, our student community. Our student community is so diverse that we need to understand how we are dealing, who we are dealing with, and create and develop our program so that it suits our students. I think that is very important. So, students that we deal with are so diverse, are from diverse backgrounds, some of whom, to be honest, have never seen a computer. They have never touched a computer in their lives, but they have to do this module. They have to pass this module. And it is our responsibility as facilitators of online module to make sure that they do pass. Online teaching and learning, I can easily say it's foreign to most of our students. Now, the following video will show you what we stand for as being a professional teacher and how teaching and learning takes place in this module. Just please sit down, relax, and watch the video.
Thank you. Wow, colleagues. Okay, thank you so much. Angie's presentation touched on all the sort of the key points of connectivism, the integration of ICT, which is a really critical skill for teachers. We used to say the message is in the medium, and in this case, apart from teaching professional teachers, the medium is also teaching them a very critical skill. Thank you. We're now going to move on. Colleagues, I'm sorry, it's my college. We have 3 presentations in this slot, and Prof. Mochi, I declared my interest before you came in. Our next one, our next presenter looks at the big challenge of merging theory and practice in teacher education. And so I'm going to introduce Dr. Pierre Picaud. And if mathematics is your game, Prof. Moche, Prof. Picaud spent 20 years as a maths teacher before joining the College of Education in 2016. It was while she completed her, while she was teaching, she completed her postgraduate studies as a distance education student. She's the module coordinator for teaching practice module in the B.Ed, and it was in this module that she felt she could merge the theory and the practical aspects of learning to teach. And this is for us something that's really important. Her research and her studies include the professional development of mathematics teachers and mathematic modeling at school level. She's also a reviewer for journals and is published. So over to you, Dr. Picaud. Welcome. We can give her a clap while she's...
I'm going to stand sort of on the side of the podium. I've come out of a classroom and standing here just doesn't feel right. Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, I just need to do the thank yous to Prof. Moche and your team for this event and for giving people a platform and also just allowing me as a lecturer to think about what I'm doing in terms of teaching and learning. As Prof. McKay said, I arrived at Unisa last year. The module I'll present to you is The module I'll present to you is a teaching practice module. It's the second year of the B.Ed students. They come to me for their teaching practice module, and the category for the entry of this Teaching and Learning Awards is module design. I'm from the Department of Curriculum and Instructional Studies in the School of Teacher Education at the College of Education. The teaching practice module is a work-integrated learning module, and it involves 5 weeks of teaching practice. Our students go out to schools and spend 5 weeks in the practical boiling pot of a classroom. It involves a number of aspects. The first thing is that they have a school-based mentor. That's a teacher who's currently in the classroom, who hosts our student. They also have, sorry, can I have the next? It also involves a Unisa-based supervisor who visits our student, and it also includes the lecturer, which is me. And when I started off with the module, I realized that the only way my voice would come through in open and distance learning in this module would be via the design, and the design of the module would underpin and support both the mentor and the supervisor. So the module involves our student and practical learning, and it's at this time in their learning that students really are facing the reality of what it means to be a teacher and stand in front of a classroom. And they're sort of grasping at the theory that they know, and they're trying to integrate that with the practical. And I needed to scaffold that for them. You can't, as a teacher, I had students from all universities in my classroom, and I will tell you that they all battle. Doesn't matter which university they come from. I needed to scaffold and to capture this type of learning that takes place when you are involved in work-integrated learning. I also, as a sideline, realized that in redesigning the portfolio, I would be able to speak to the mentor teacher and to guide the mentor teacher in terms of what it was the university wanted from them. So the portfolio exists in all teaching practice modules. I'm just going to present the revisions, the refinements, and the changes that I've made to this module. It is a non-venue-based examination. So the first thing I did was we have an old assignment there. The students describe the school environment that I integrated into the portfolio. I didn't just stop at the description of the school environment, but I also asked the student to reflect on how does this affect you as a teacher? How does your environment, how does the context change things? We cannot assume in South African schools that there's a one-size-fits-all, and students needed to realize this. It also, by putting it into the portfolio, it assisted the marker and myself in understanding the context. We couldn't be at all schools at all times, but it would definitely be the first thing we looked at before going on and reading the lessons and the resources that the student used. And by adding in the reflective component into this, I wanted the student to think about the context and what it means for you as a teacher. The second thing I did was in my first year, I simply put an observation guide onto the My Unisa platform for support, but this year and next year, it's part of the portfolio so that students who do not have access also have the benefit of the guide. The guide is a very fine grain analysis on what it is I want students to notice in classrooms. There's a lot going on in a classroom, and I wanted them to specifically look out for certain things. I think I want students to respond when they are teachers and not to react. So I was hoping that by putting in this fine grain analysis of observation, it would help the students. The lesson plans that I've included for students to fill in are ask for a lot more detail, I ask a lot of questions, and the students are writing a lot more, which is my markers have also mentioned. So I ask them to actually prepare questions beforehand. I ask them what they will be doing in the classroom at that time. I ask them how long this will take. I want to know what the learners are going to be doing. So I've made the lesson planning far more detailed, but I've guided them through by asking specific questions. I asked students to fill out a page worth of a teaching philosophy, and I like to do this while they're on teaching practice. Hopefully they're away from their textbooks and from our study guides, and I really want to know from them, who are they? What do they believe about teaching? Why are they into teaching? I wanted them to sit in classrooms and really reflect about why they wanted to become a teacher, and I didn't want them to take these answers or this paragraph out of a textbook. I also give them weekly journals in which they trace their own development over the 5 weeks. I ask them to gauge how they're doing with certain aspects. I ask them to look at specific things, discipline, how they're getting on with their mentor teacher, what their level of planning is like, how they're enjoying their extramurals. So I like them to think holistically about their 5 weeks in a school and not simply on the lessons that they are planning. Then I've added in specific mentor-teacher activities that I want the mentor-teacher to do with the student. That's my voice to the mentor. It guides the mentor-teacher. There are 5, some of which I've taken from other universities with permission. So it's roughly 1 a week where the mentor teacher and the student really sit down and work on something that is not simply the mentor evaluating the student and saying, here, I'm going to mark your lesson. So there's also extensive reflection in the portfolio. I want the student to think both in terms of micro and macro reflection. They reflect on their lessons, they reflect on specific instances in the lessons, they reflect on the subject that they're teaching as a whole, and I'm trying to help the student to notice things as a theoretical construct of noticing. I ask them to look at what can they control and what can't they control when teaching. I want to empower them, and really I want to scaffold the first year reality of being a teacher. I had many students in my classroom, and it's really hard to get that first year of teaching right. In terms of student support for the module, I have podcasts and screencasts and observation guides and discussion forums and the PowerPoints and all sorts of things. There's a power tune on how to ask questions in the classroom. So I've really tried to assist them on critical matters on the Unisa platform. I also have discussion forums. And you can see I've highlighted every time that I'm on the discussion forum, I really try to be quite visible for them. And the nicest thing is that eventually they start answering each other. My best was, Dr. Picaud told us 10 times already what to do with our register. So it's wonderful that they start answering each other, but I'm very visible on the discussion forum. This was last year's overview of how many times the Unisa was visited, and these are the numbers to date. It'll obviously increase before we close up for the end of the year. So the students are using it. In terms of a team approach, I definitely was at the sound and video department quite a lot. They helped me to create screencasts on the more problematic aspects of the portfolio. I also included real classroom footage, all with the correct permissions to take, so that students understood when I said, use cheap resources, that is sort of what I meant. So I embedded some classroom footage in the screencasts. I work with a teaching practice office. We're looking at developing supervisor guides so that when the supervisors go out, especially for problematic subjects like maths and science, that I can support them and my voice can go through to them too. Part of the criteria for this award is being creative and relevant and using learning technologies. I did stay within the My Unisa platform, discussions, podcasts, PowerTunes, PowerPoint mix. I have a poll, links to the curriculum documents, screencasts, everything to support the students. Feedback from the students, you won't be able to see that. I've put a poll up to ask them what were the most successful and the most challenging aspects of being out in the field. And that the first block is last year's results, and learner discipline comes up high. We're not quite finished with a poll for this year, but learner discipline is coming up high. And they're also telling me by that the most downloaded document of My Unisa is some tips for classroom management. So I'm getting the sense that my next portfolio needs to deal with learner discipline to assist them. The markers have given me feedback. They enjoy the wide range of activities. The rubric that standardizes the marking across all the portfolios, it extends to the online marking also. And this marker said they're more specific questions. They guide the students and they give a more in-depth account. The markers did say they are marking much harder. The last form of feedback I did was my own critical self-reflection on the module. I designed a module improvement plan. I looked at the module outcomes at the end of last year, and I'll do it again at the end of this year, and actually rank how well I've done in terms of meeting the outcomes for the module. I look at the assessment and the results for the module. I've also rated the module in terms of its compliance with the minimum requirements for teacher education qualifications, specifically the annexure that deals with the basic competencies of a beginner teacher. So I've ranked the module according to that and looked at where possible weaknesses in the module lie. I've also looked at the national performance standards for teachers to see how I'm managing to get students, when they do come into their first year of teaching and they are rated according to that standard, that they are ready to meet it. And I took part in the internal quality review for the module last year. So I also try and bring in the needs of the employer, because it's a work-integrated module. The needs and the standards of the employer are critical in this module. Is it a rich learning environment, work-integrated learning, and a portfolio that has integrated information and activities together with online support? I started by putting on online support last year. I couldn't change the portfolio, I just arrived. And then this year, the online support was integrated into the portfolio. Next year, I'll do the same thing. As the online support shows that it's valid and it's useful, I will put it into the portfolio. So really, the portfolio for 2018 is quite a comprehensive document. What I'm really trying to do is to stop a seagull attitude to teaching practice, where you fly in and fly out. I would rather see our students more as eagles, going in and taking something really valuable with them from their teaching practice experience. One of my colleagues taught me about this phrase, about if you build it, they will come, which is used in online learning, and I've just changed it to, if you build it, you will learn. My own learning through developing this module has been enormous. And the image credits, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Picaud. That was just so that colleagues in the hall know that we place 40,000 students for teaching practice each year. And so it needs to be managed, and I like the way the author's voice comes through in various aspects. We're now moving on to training of managers, and I'm going to ask while Professor Pierre Picaud is coming up, that I can introduce him. He's a professor of strategy at Unisa's Graduate School of Business Leadership and was the acting director for executive education at the same institution in 2015 and 16. He holds an MBA from the University of Pretoria and a doctorate in business management from Unisa. Prior to his academic career, Dr. Venter spent 10 years working for Telkom, and so he'll be quite useful in the online domain, in various marketing and strategic positions. He's published widely in the fields of strategy and marketing and is the editor and author of a number of successful strategy and marketing textbooks. Welcome, Professor, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Before I start with the presentation, it may be useful to just give you a little bit of background about this particular module and the project that we embarked on. At the SPL, traditionally, because we have more of a contact focus with study schools and so on, we're quite used to a lecturer-centric approach. So typically a lecturer would teach a module, they would use a well-known textbook, write some sort of wraparound, and then depend quite heavily on study schools to engage with students and to do a lot of their teaching face-to-face. But the study schools actually make up a fairly small percentage of the teaching time that you spend with students. So it was quite a challenge with the MBA when we moved to a more online approach, actually more a hybrid approach, as I'll show you later on. So that necessitated us to move away from a lecturer-centric approach, and what we try to do in this module is to be more student-centric, to expose the student to more voices and more individuals, and altogether make it a richer learning environment. And so what I will share with you is what we try to do in that. At the end, also some lessons learned. As you will know, if you teach, Murphy's Law is always applicable somewhere along the line, so there are definitely some lessons that we learned along the way and will improve on as we go on. There you go. Okay, so the module itself, it's the module in strategic management, which is a core module on the MBA degree, which is a 180 credit degree. It's the new MBA that we had to redevelop at relatively short notice after we were only notified, I think in September 2015, that the degree was accredited and that it had to be presented from 2016. So that obviously put us under a lot of pressure in terms of the development. What helped us a little bit was that we could present the module a little bit later on in the year, after students had some exposure to some foundational modules in accounting, finance, and so on. We started off, we thought we would have a fairly small group, but even though we advertised very late, we ended up with 102 students in the first intake. So it was still a substantial group of students that we had to engage with. The only contact, as I said, was really that they had an orientation session of about 4 days right at the outset of their studies, where the focus was really not on any content. It was more on the process of studying for an MBA and the process of online study and so on. So that meant that we had very limited face-to-face time. So what I'll talk about, that's essentially the 5 areas that I will talk about in terms of the process that we followed. The focus is more on module design, but as we go through, I think you'll realize, as we did, that you cannot really separate module design from module delivery, and there was a lot of iterative processes going on all the time in our presentation of the module. So what we decided to do right from the outset is to follow a team approach. So what we did is, in terms of the module development process, was to start off with a workshop where we had all of the strategy academics that were involved in the module think about what do we want to include in a state-of-the-art strategic management module. And so that we spent a few days planning around that, that was essentially the curriculum design part of it. And then also to think about how do we allocate work to academics according to their strengths, so that we have people working on areas where they feel they can contribute the most. And then the first action for us, sorry, it seems to keep reacting after the fact. So the first task was to develop some sort of module overview to organize the module for us and to have an understanding of what we want to include in the module, what we want to assess, how we want to assess it, and we then proceeded with the module. Once we all agreed on that, we proceeded with the actual module development process, excuse me. Okay, so this is in essence what the module development process looked like from a team approach. You'll see that we were 5 academics that all acted as critical readers. And I think that was very enriching in the sense that we could all contribute to all of the study units to suggest additions and changes and so on. In addition to that, we had a lot of support, for example, from our own internal DCLD, Mrs. Marta Sephora, from main campus DCLD, our librarians who were great in supporting us in the process, right up to the advertising agency that helped us to design templates for the study material to be put online. And as I suggested on one of the previous slides, we actually followed a hybrid approach in the sense that even though everything was available only online, we did have study units that we included in the process. Okay, and you can see, so just a sense of what we try to do with the study material. So we really try to go beyond just a textbook, especially for a module at this level. You want people to have much more exposure, obviously, to other voices, other inputs, and we try to enrich the material by extensive use of, for example, case studies, video lectures, video links to popular articles and various other types of module material. So even though we had a prescribed textbook, we still made use of that for very specific reasons, but that was supplemented by the study units, module overview, and other study material. That was just an example. You won't be able to read it, but what we try to do is also to give the students a sense. Because they were working on their own, we try to give them a sense of what is expected by what time. So we draw up a little sort of, very simple Gantt chart to try and give them a sense of what happens at what times during the presentation of the module, so that they could always know what to expect when. Okay, and then if we look at the way that we try to assess in the module, once again we try to go a little bit beyond the standard 2 assignments and an examination, and we try to also include not only were the assignments very practical, but we also included the online participation. So we had tutors that also participated, and I'll talk about the presentation just now with and the role of the tutors. But their tutor group participation also formed a part of the assessment. We also, as you will see, we also included a business strategy simulation as part of the assessment. Unfortunately, we had to cancel that. That's one of the lessons learned that I will share with you later on, but we had to cancel that so that they, because it was simply too expensive for the students to actually subscribe to it in the end. And then we still had a venue-based examination for the simple reason that for international accreditations, they still want some sort of examination process. So we couldn't move to a purely portfolio-based approach as yet. That might be something that we would consider in future, though. Okay, and I think that just explains the module assessments process. typically what we would do is give the students the assessment rubric along with the assignments so that they know exactly what is expected of them. All of the assessments are practical. As you can imagine, we're dealing with people typically from a business or a public sector environment that want to be better managers, and so they would, we try and make it as practical as possible to help them to integrate their learning with the assessment. We had tutors, online tutors, that marked the assignments. We had to provide them with detailed assessment guidelines on what some of the options were and how to assess the assignments. As module leader, I moderated 2 assignments per tutor and then gave tutors feedback. So we didn't use the standard Unisa tutoring system. We had our own tutors, typically people with some practical experience, some work experience that could engage with the students. And then my role was really to try and just calibrate the tutors to give them feedback whether they are on the mark, whether they're too lenient, too strict, or if there are other problems with the assessments. The tutors also allocated a mark for online participation, which was based on the frequency and the quality of the contributions. And then the examination, again, just to still keep it as practical as possible, the examination was case-based and then marked by the module leader and a contract lecturer. I suspect I might have skipped a slide on the tutors because I realize there's something missing on the module presentation. I'll see if we can get back to that. That's just an example of a module assessment, and what we try to do with the assessments is really to get people to apply what they learned in their context. So for their first, this was their assignment 1. So for their assignment, we asked them to do an analysis of a small business or an NGO. So to engage with a company that they might not be familiar with at any level, to engage with them, to go through a process of understanding their strategy, their environment, and giving feedback to the company in the form of a presentation. And incidentally, what we learned from this is that even though presentation skills might be quite important for managers, it's a skill that our students don't necessarily have. So it's something that we may want to include in the curriculum in the future to help them learn that skill as well. Okay, and then the part 2, as you can see, the smaller part of the assessment was around the participation in the online discussions, the 5 tutor groups, tutor discussions. The process that we chose required a lot of student support because it was presented only online. It was, they received the assessment rubrics, they were sent preparations for the tutorials, they were given feedback after, they were given feedback after the assignments, they were provided with generic assignment feedback, feedback on activities in the study units were provided, and so on. I think those were some of the lessons that we learned. Some had to do with technology. We found that the technology that we used was not very suited to group discussions. It was basically a form of my Unisa or Sakai technology. Still a problem with African case studies and more African-centered material. And also we found that a lot of students didn't really participate in online discussions, even if they could get marks for it. So we found that only about half of them participated at all in the discussions. Okay, so in essence, what we tried to do, and that's just a lot of information that I'm not going to go through, what we tried to do was to create a richer learning environment. I think to some degree we've succeeded in that. We've succeeded in trying to at least provide a more interactive environment, even though students were purely online, and to make them feel more part of a classroom. And I think the student feedback, at least, was that was relatively successful. Thank you.
Piet had a strategy, stole the water. Okay. Colleagues, thank you to Piet who took us through the strategy that they went through for developing a course on strategy. Our next presenter is Anton Pablo, and while Anton's on his way up here, colleagues also from the SBL, and Professor Anton Pablo will be presenting on student success. Just by way of background, he has a PhD in industrial psychology from Northwest University, and a B and an honours and a master's from University of Pretoria. He's a qualified industrial psychologist. His area is Master People Practitioner and International Affiliate to the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology. He's a full professor at Unisa School of Business Leadership, and he specializes in organizational behavior. Many of you will remember Anton because he worked on this campus before he was employed at the SBL. He was the director for OD and HR on the campus. And prior to that, he was the national head of psychological services at the rank of brigadier, okay, in the South African Police Services. He has an extensive academic and research profile. Welcome to you, Anton, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. As the Chair mentioned, it's all about student success, and please bear with me. I will give you some statistics on the student success 2015, 16, and 17. But I will also give you some background lessons learned and possible challenges that I've faced during my endeavor with this program. As Professor Piet has just alluded to, is that if you look at our student cohort, a lot of them are professional people. You've got your lawyers, your pharmacists, doctors, engineers, and many of them do not have any research background. So in the MBL, and later on the MBA as well, in their third year they have a research report or some kind of a mini dissertation. And it was identified as a challenge because the success rate was about 30%. With the result of that, only a few of them managed to complete the MBL rep. You will find a lot of students complete all their modules except the MBL rep. Okay, at the end, it impacted on our subsidy, on our brand, even our academic image, because a lot of students said they do not want to do the MBL because they're going to struggle to graduate because of the MBL rep. What did we do? As far back as 2013, we had a workshop to say, how are we going to address this problem? The challenges identified during this workshop was supervision. Remember, we are only about 19 faculty members, and we've got a student cohort of 250, 300, 400, and at the end we are relying on external supervision. So we are getting people from outside who do not necessarily have the necessary supervisory skills. The other issue of student support. They feel that they select a topic and then they're on their own, and when they find themselves, it's the end of the year and they must register again for the module. And in terms of the program and our support structures, frequent communication, etc., they said it were some challenges. If you look at the supervision, as I say, the student allocation, very often students are allocated in March, April to a supervisor. It's an issue. The supervision process, it's not standardized because we're using external people as well. Student support, the skills development. As I say, a lot of them haven't done any research for the last 20 years, and they need some skills development. Unrealistic expectations, we are pushing them for certain milestones throughout the year, and they found it to be very unrealistic. If you look at the program, the support structures, the resources, and very important, the management information systems. The view was that there are not clear deadlines, measurements, early identification of struggling students. So the MIS was also mentioned as a problem. Okay, proposed solution. And this was also included, and it's still included in the SPL strategic plan, is to have research focus areas, but specifically to have structured research opportunities for students. I will share the detail with you just now. I've started in 2015 with some of these structured research programs, and there are currently 4 programs running in 2017. For the purpose of this presentation, I will quickly look at the success of the 2016 programs and the preliminary success of the 2017 programs at this stage. Okay, the 2016, as we are the business school and we are busy with leadership, one of the programs was in terms of leadership. The second one was an organizational behavior program, where we looked at ethical climates, leadership styles, outcome variables, behavioral variables. So the students were provided with 2 options, to follow the leadership program or the organizational behavior program. Now, just in short, if you look at the leadership, 35 students participated, 21 in the organizational behavior. At the end, the student retention, please bear with me, I don't know all these academic jargon of retention and success. For me, this is a success story. So in terms of retention, at least we retained them, we kept them for the whole year. At the end, 88.5% of the leadership people graduated and submitted on time. Remember, we are looking at a baseline of about 30% in general, and 81% on the organizational behavior. So those are all numbers, and I'm being questioned about the quality there. All our research reports are examined by external assessors, and you can see that the average mark of those 31 of the leadership was 73.5%, with a spread of from 52% to 84%. Very similar with the organizational behavior. So I think in terms of that, it indicates that at least we are teaching people how to do this specific type of research, and that the examiners actually acknowledge the effort. The bottom, what unfortunately is cut off, the organizational behavior project, there was one student that was identified as the best student of all the MBL reps in 2016. It was a student that was participating in the organizational behavior project. I think his average was 88%. Now this year, the 2017, and I think with this is very important, is not to create some kind of a pet project for the primary lecturer, is to give the students the opportunity to select from various topics. There's again a leadership one, there's a new one on organizational change. And this specific project is escalating into a doctorate now. One of our colleagues in the support environment at Unisa is doing his DBL, and he's working on the pool data. It's a first, and it's something that we want to sell as a possible way of doing a doctorate. There's ethics in the workplace, and then we've added an MBA, because the program that Pierre talked about, the qualification, there's also a research report involved. And I've specifically developed a human resource capital program for that. Now, if we look at retention, now my definition of retention, and I think it's quite relevant for our purposes, is active students by today's date. So they have met all the milestones, submitted their data, submitted their chapters, so they are online to submit by the end of November, which is our due date. 88% of the 34 students in leadership is on track. Of the 49 students in organizational change, 87, the ethics in the workplace, 81, and 85 for human resource capital. All in all, I've calculated there's about 86% of all the students that are still on track to submit on time. Remember our baseline of 30%? So I think it's all in all there's huge success. For all 4 programs, 138 students, 119 are still active. It's a huge number of students because they see you as the father, as the program leader, as the slave. You are 24/7 on duty. So in terms of communication, it's hectic, but at least we can show the results. Okay, what does a structured program entail? For the primary lecturer or the program leader, you will do the conceptualization with the students, and with this, we are taking our current curriculum, we are looking at our, what we present in terms of leadership, of change, organizational behavior, and we have built it into these programs so that we can have a very context-specific delivery of material in terms of this. So the primary lecturer or the primary researcher will do the conceptualization, will do the student recruitment. This is becoming a lot easier. I've been accused of cannibalism this year by senior people at the SBL because so many people want to do it in this way. Next year I will have to limit it. So student recruitment becomes a lot easier because people can see the benefit of this approach and the results. Very important, supervisor recruitment. As the primary or the program leader, I'm recruiting supervisors that's able to supervise this specific type of research. And they are getting frequent communication as well as some briefing sessions. We need to structure the program. The contracting between students and supervisors, we have contact sessions. Instrument development, very important. This discussion this morning about Africa context and the whole thing of decolonialization. I'm looking at the instruments, I'm getting it from international people, we customize it, we standardize it for South African or the African context, class ethical clearance. Very important, these students are reporting on pool data, so they can report on sectors, it's higher level of research. I just want to get to the challenges, and very important, the programs must complement the module overview, something that I had to prove. There must be a clear commitment from the primary researcher. You can't go on sabbatical that year. You must remain with that group for the whole year, and you must follow a progressive approach. Start small, building on it, and use last year's results in future programs. It's about the validity, it's about the credibility of the program. Transparency. People are asking what's in it for me. There's a lot in it for me. I'm proud of my work, but there's also publications that's coming up out of these things. So we need to be very transparent. You can see we've covered all of these. I just want to get to the... And this is the conclusion. It was a very interesting and very stimulating journey, and it's still, and I'm building the 2018 projects now. And I think it's a win-win for students, the SBL, the universities, supervisors, all in all. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks. Let's move to the last live session, and then I hope we'll still have time for the last video. If not, we might push it to the next slot. It's a duet from Kaz, and I want to welcome Suze Buchner and Nkosinati Masela. And I'm going to introduce them very briefly. Suze joined Unisa in 2001, and she's devoted herself to deliver high-quality, business-relevant, face-to-face and blended financial management. She's a qualified chartered accountant, and she's actively contributed to strengthening the department's activities in enterprise, student employability, and employer engagement. And she successfully maintained the required professional standing through playing a key role as an active and recognized contributor to the SACA marking processes and continued professional development for chartered accountants. And the other half of the duet is Nkosinati Masela, and he joined the College of Accounting Sciences in 2014. He lectures financial management at third-year level in the Department of Management Accounting, and he's also a qualified chartered accountant, having spent more than 8 years in the financial services sector. He's currently involved in community engagement projects which seek to provide tutorial support to high school learners. So you're welcome in our college as well, okay, to high school learners in disadvantaged communities. And he's a member of the college's tuition and marketing committee. And when he's not on campus, he's busy completing his master's degree. Welcome to both of you. And colleagues, while they come up, you can give them a hand. Thanks.
You hear, you forget. You see, you remember. You do, you understand. In 2017 and beyond, how do we transform the art and science, the pedagogy of learning so that we teach students how to understand? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Myself and Noti is lecturers at the Department of Management Accounting at the College of Accounting Sciences. We are lecturers in MAC 3702, which is the financial management on third-year level. In the context of open distance e-learning education in an African university, as well as in the demands of a decolonised university, accounting faces the following challenges. There it is. Unemployment levels in South Africa is in a new high, versus the accounting skill, which is scarce and in high demand. And we need to look at that and try and marry it together. The next one is not many students, or many students are excluded from accounting studies due to the fact of the low pass rate in mathematics, which is a prerequisite of accounting-related studies. Demands and need for more affordable education costs, rising internet and data bundle costs are also very important in distance e-learning affordability. Due to local and international scandals, ethics in the business environment is receiving more importance. In a decolonised university, striking a balance between preparing students for local and global employment opportunities. South African Institute of Chartered Accountants recently visited the College of Accounting Sciences. In their findings, it became clear that it is a psycho-imperative to prepare students to use technology to its full potential. With this imperative in mind, we use Unisa more and more for access for formulative assessments, uploading of assignments, attempts, and additional study resources to enhance and support learning. As you can see, there is that the number of Unisa activities in 2014, we had 32,000 activities. In this last semester, the second semester in 2016, more than or almost 115,000. The resources uploaded and access almost doubled, and the average Unisa visits per student increased from 18 to 31. MAC 3702 is a blended module, and therefore assessments and assignments is available on Unisa. We encourage students to use the technology and to upload assignments on Unisa versus the old methods like the post, email, or dropping it off in assignment boxes. There you will see that the assignments almost like uploaded on Unisa has increased, and this semester almost 99% of all students have uploaded their assignments online. If students do struggle and they know that they will encounter a problem, we make exceptions to the rule and help students with uploading it on time. In assignment 2, we encourage students that to do is to understand. We align assignments with the standard look and experience that they can expect in the exam. Mark plan guides students and give them insight in the marking process. This develops successful exam techniques, therefore giving students the confidence to successfully pass on their first attempt. Unique requirements is also being asked to the students. That helps to make students, they need to think critically and apply their knowledge in such a way that it's expected that the answers do not look similar to other students. This helps to limit students to use the work of other students. The pass rates of MAC 3702 have increased by 12% over the last few years. This was possible due to the following factors. Group discussion classes was being held. We've upped the amount of group discussion classes. It is held at the main centers, and we're now doing 2 group discussion classes, one at the beginning of the semester, just before assignment 2, and the other one just before the exam. We also are engaging or help using technology like video conferencing to access the other smaller centers that doesn't fall into the main campus amount of students that can attend these lectures. A very important aspect as well is the assignment 2 looks more like a mock exam, which prepares the student and gives them an idea of what to expect in the exam and gives them a mock opportunity experience. We've also uploaded a question bank and additional questions on chapters where the textbook does not give practical examples for students on third-year students. My colleague, Mr. Masala, will now guide you through the next part of the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just to piggyback on what my colleague has just covered on the summative assessment issue. I would say the South African accounting profession is actually considered to be one of the best in the world. And obviously this is before the KPMG saga. And basically one of the reasons that makes it to be quite unique is the way that the South African standard is actually, or the South African accounting profession has actually complied or has actually fully embraced and adopted the international accounting standards. So the dilemma that we have here is that one part is we're trying to comply with the international standards, but then at the same time we're saying, wait a minute, we've got to teach and assess in an African context. So how do we balance the two? How do we make sure that what we teach our students is actually relevant to what is happening in the environment? So our starting point is basically to say, wait a minute, let's look at what at the textbooks that we are using. And we're not saying we should stay away from the UK and the US textbooks, but we are saying maybe for financial management, it's better that we go for something that is local. And then that's why we actually use the prescribed textbooks that we have actually for the actually local based. And now, so what we also do with the assessments is we also try to focus. So it's not just a matter of changing names to say, let's just change the name from ABC company to Ulu Limited or something like that. Now what we are saying is, no, let's look at the scenarios that are unique to the South African environment. So in our past past assessments, what we'll do, we'll bring in issues like e-toll that we have over there, where we say, how does this actually impact the accounting space? Other issues we've brought in, like Nigeria, like companies like MTN, to say, okay, these companies are operating in other parts of Africa, of the African continent. So now what do you say? What are the compliance issues that we are facing there? What are the issues around the social, economic factors of those countries? So we try to make sure that whatever is current at the moment, we also bring into our class to say students must start thinking about these issues at an African level. So we also understand that this actually hits hard, especially in our communities, to say now what is the impact, and then how are we bringing in the social, how are we bringing in awareness on HIV issues, how are we dealing with issues like now there's a concept of sugar tax that is coming on board. These issues are quite critical in the South African content, and you're not going to find them when you use a US or a UK literature. So we sort of like try to balance the two. And then the issue of Black economic empowerment, again, the way the deals are structured, the accounting of those, how are we teaching our students to understand exactly what's happening in those spaces? And then basically, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying all these scenarios, what we try to do, we bring them in to our formative assessment, to our summative assessment, and then, so students are not caught off guard. At the same time, students understand what they're dealing with. We bring them issues like EDGARs or MTN, data costs, and so on and so forth, just to make sure that the syllabus is relevant, is applicable as well on their day-to-day activities. I don't know whether I have to relax or this has to relax. I think, ladies and gentlemen, you'll agree with me that the FI concession, I think we say the take-home assessment has been quite a concern over the past few semesters to say, is this something that we should be doing as the university to give students assessments to take home and so on and so forth. So now what makes it even more complicated is when you come to modules like ours, where we've got about 200, actually more than 200 students that are registered, that actually qualify for the FI concession. Now, first of all, it's the matter of, all of a sudden, we've got 4 assessment periods during the year. So that causes quite a strain in terms of the resources. But then over and above that is the fact that now if you've got 240 students that are writing the same paper, chances are they're going to be able to organize themselves nicely, and then they'll start sharing answers, copying, and so on and so forth. So first time we had this, which was quite a concern, we could see a lot of cases of plagiarism, if I may say, where students were actually copying from someone, or in some instances, they would get someone to write the stuff for them. So now what we did was to actually create business case studies. So we'd have about 40, let's say, business case studies, more like question papers that are different, which we send to students. So now at the end of the day, you find that you've got about 5 or 6 students writing the same paper. Now, obviously, there's also a concern there to say if that 5 or 6, for some reason, is based in one area, how do you avoid making sure that you eliminate the risk completely? So what we did was, Susan and I, we designed a declaration form, that's what we called it. That's what we call it. And then we use this declaration form. In fact, it's actually used by the entire college now. And then the reason why we are doing this declaration form is actually based on 4 things. So 4 things that we want to look at. 4 things that we're trying to accomplish by using this, this form. I think the first one is just to make sure that, so we send this form to the students the minute they're identified by the exams department to say they qualify for the FI. We send them the form, they fill it in, and then they send it back to us. So what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that the students, first of all, they are able to upload this form on my Unisa, because it's basically an online assessment. That's the first part. So the second part is also to get the handwriting. So we want to say, okay, we can see the handwriting, and then when it comes to the take-home assessment, are they actually using the same writing? Obviously, we're not experts in handwriting, but then it sort of like guides us if we think there's anything that is funny there. So another issue is also the location So when they fill in the form, we ask them exactly where they're going to be writing, and so that sort of gives us an idea of where the students are going to be based. Obviously, there's issues of technology and how they can easily do that, but then again, I think this is just one of the measures we're trying to put in. And another issue is just basically to sign the pledge to say, I commit that this is going to be my work, I haven't worked with anyone, I haven't shared it with anyone, and then if I'm in contravention of this, I will be happy to get a 0 mark. Yeah, so this is basically the spreadsheet that we keep behind the scenes, and so what we do is once we send the staff to the, so we basically have got 240 students that need to get the assessment. So beforehand, we basically program the staff on email so that let's say the assessment starts at 9, so we make sure that 9 o'clock all the students have got the exam paper. So what we do in return, now the students have to upload their portfolio on my Unisa, let's say after 3 or 4 hours, and then after that, we can download the assessments from my Unisa, and then we mark them. So what we're currently busy with the exams department is actually to find a better way, because currently we have to print out all the 240 portfolios. So now we just want to mark everything online and send the marks straight to exams. And now what's going to happen is we can also send the marks or the scripts to the students. So that, because I understand that in the meantime, they are not able to repurchase or to do the remarking and all those things. So at least now what we do is we just send them the scripts. They can see exactly where the problems are. And in the event that the student has not been successful, they are able to see exactly where they went wrong and so on and so forth. So basically that is what we are busy with in terms of the assessment. It's very important for us because we understand the impact that it has at the end of the day, also considering the low pass rates that we've been confronted with in the past years. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you.